Today, we're going to be looking into the timelines of a few shady government organizations, how they evolved from one to another, and the many similarities to the Gifted and Talented program, which is still active today. So let's get right into it. Alright, so we're going to start here with the earliest project I could find, called Project Artichoke. And according to Wikipedia, Project Artichoke started on August 20th, 1951. It was also called Operation Artichoke, and it was a CIA operation for the purpose of researching methods of interrogation. Project Artichoke was also succeeded by Project MK Ultra, which began in 1953. Project Artichoke was initially known as Project Bluebird. The primary goal of Project Artichoke was to determine whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform acts of attempted assassination, using mind control and hypnosis, forced to addiction, drugs like morphine and other chemicals including LSD, to produce amnesia and other vulnerable states in victims. And then here in the description, it says Project Artichoke was a mind control program that gathered information together with the intelligence divisions of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and FBI. In January 1952, they asked, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation?" I don't know. That sounds pretty crazy to me. It sounds a lot like MK Ultra. Next, we have the Monroe Institute of Applied Science presents the Gateway Program. And it says here, in 1958, Robert Monroe, a New York broadcasting executive, began having experiences that drastically altered his life. But we'll get more into the Gateway Program in a moment. Next, we have DARPA, which stands for Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and it's a research and development agency by the U.S. Department of Defense. It was originally known as the Advanced Research Project Agency, ARPA, and was created on February 7, 1958 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in response to the Soviet launching of Sputnik in 1957. DARPA formulates and executes research and development projects to expand their frontier of technology and science. The organization went from ARPA to DARPA in March of 1972, changing back to ARPA in February of 93, then reverted to DARPA in March of 1996. The Economist has called DARPA the agency that shaped the modern world, with technologies like Moderna's C-19 back, weather satellites, GPS, drones, stealth technology, and voice interfaces, the personal computer, and the internet on the list of innovations for which DARPA can claim at least partial credit for. The reason I bring up DARPA, even though it's not directly related to what we're talking about here, is that the recent history here, from 1981 to present, that on February 4th, 2004, the agency shut down its so-called LifeLog project. The project's aim would have been to gather in a single place just about everything an individual says, sees, or does. What makes me scratch my head is that Facebook was created in 2004, and it certainly sounds like a coincidence to me, except I don't believe in coincidences. According to Wikipedia, as of November 2024, Facebook ranked as the third most visited website in the world, 23% of its traffic coming from the United States. It was the most downloaded mobile app in the 2010s. Getting back on track with our timeline brings us to MK Ultra. What was MK Ultra? The CIA's top secret Cold War research program. During the 1950s and 60s, the CIA used brainwashing, hypnosis, and torture on thousands of subjects brutalized by the infamous Project MK Ultra experiments. What are these experiments? They may sound like science fiction, but allegedly, CIA researchers abused helpless subjects in some of the most disturbing experiments in history. They used mind control capabilities and started in 1953. What followed was an extensive program undertaken across 80 institutions, universities, and hospitals. Each one carried out torturous experiments including electrocution, verbal abuse, and dosing subjects with massive quantities of LSD. Kathy O'Brien, who's labeled a conspiracy theorist by Wikipedia, alleges that she was part of the CIA's Project MKUltra, and forced by the CIA to participate in Project Monarch, which she claims is a subsection of Project MKUltra and Project Artichoke. According to O'Brien, under hypnosis, she was able to recall memories of sexual abuse of both herself and her daughter by international PDF file rings, drug barons, and Satanists who allegedly used a form of trauma-based mind control programming to make her a slave. And that brings us to Project Talent. According to Wikipedia, Project Talent is a national study that first surveyed over 440,000 American high school students in 1960. At the time, it was the largest, most comprehensive study of high school students ever conducted in the United States, designed by the American Institute for Research founder John Flanagan, a non-profit, nonpartisan research institute funded by the United States Office of Education. At 1, 5, and 11 years after projected high school graduation, participants were asked to complete additional mail questionnaires that focused on their work and personal life. In 2009, the American Institutes for Research began preparations for the additional follow-up studies. Over the past 50 years, researchers have utilized Project Talent data for studies in economics, sociology, psychology, psychometrics, history, health, education, and many other fields. Project Talent's combination of aptitude, cognitive, social, psychological, and health measures make it a unique data source for life course studies. In an interview with Time magazine in 1962, Dr. Flanagan explained his conviction that many Americans were entering professions for which they were unsuited. He described Project Talent as a mechanism for identifying individual strengths and steering them onto the paths where those strengths would be utilized. And he designed and administered exams to match the raw abilities to particular skill sets. Regarding Project Talent, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson wrote to Dr. Flanagan that it would be difficult to think of a more worthwhile undertaking than your efforts to assure that the best use is made of our nation's most valuable resources. And he designed and administered exams to match raw abilities to particular skill sets. Regarding Project Talent, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson wrote to Dr. Flanagan that it would be difficult to think of a more worthwhile undertaking than your efforts to assure that the best use is made of our nation's most valuable resource. Stargate Project was a secret U.S. Army unit established in 1977, according to Wikipedia. It was made to investigate the potential for psychic phenomenon in military and domestic intelligence applications. The project and its precursors and sister projects went by various code names like Stargate, Grill Flame, Center Lane, Sunstreak, and more. The Stargate project's work primarily involved remote viewing and purported ability to psychically see events. The Stargate project was terminated and declassified in 1995 after a CIA report concluded that it was never useful in any intelligence operation. Information provided by the program was vague. The program was featured in the 2004 book and the 2009 film Men Who Stare at Goats. Some claim that the public school program was connected to the CIA's Gateway program. The federal program was developed in the 1980s to instruct and train people in the art of switching perceptual modes, the art of becoming more conscious of one's particular inner resources, inner abilities, and most of all, one's inner guidance. It was used to explore the limitations of human consciousness using sound, meditation, and other techniques. Here we have a bill introduced into the Senate called the Jacob K. Javits Gifted and Talented Children's and Youth Education Act of 1987. The program sets forth priorities including the identification and inclusion of gifted and talented children and youth who may not be identified through traditional assessment methods. It sets forth provisions for participation of private school children and teachers. This brings us to the GATE program. And while GATE had a precursor in California called the Mentally Gifted Minor Program, that was established in 1961, The GATE program has been going since the early 80s, if not earlier. And here's an interesting document I found on Internet Archives called NANO Domestic Quell. Protocols for Phase 4. Current total infection rate for United States general population 87.2%. Projected infection for general U.S. populace by January 2014 is estimated to reach 98%. Total infection for ages 18 and above may reach 99%. And then it goes on to have listed down here PepsiCo 9.9%, Nestle ADR 8.5%, Chicago Municipal 5.1%, Atlanta Municipal 4.4%, Danone 4.2%, Coca-Cola 4.1%, Los Angeles Municipal 2.9%, and Seattle Municipal 1%. What were they infecting people with? That's the question I have. And this is the proposed solution. New legislation to meet these challenges include developing defense, securing our rights with constitutional amendment, and reviewing what signal bands are safe to use versus those that create public health hazard. Prepared by Brandon Evans, Director of the International Center for Electromagnetic Justice, Inc. in Spring, Texas. The next one is interesting, that was put out by the White House, President Barack Obama, called the BRAIN Initiative. Brain research through advanced, innovative neurotechnologies. We have a chance to improve the lives of not just millions, but billions of people on this planet through research that is done in this BRAIN Initiative alone. But it's going to require a serious effort, a sustained effort, and it's going to require us as a country to embody and embrace the spirit of discovery that is what made America America. President Obama, April 2nd, 2013. And finally, the significance of the BRAIN Initiative is to uncover the mysteries of brain disorders such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, depression, and traumatic brain injury, and to explore the brain and how it processes, uses, stores, and retrieves vast quantities of information and links brain function and behavior. While these last two aren't exactly related to these other programs, I just find it weird that the BRAIN Initiative started the same year as the NANO project. Just made me think. And that's all I have for you on this one. If you want to find more information about this stuff, some of the sources I used is here is Emma Catherine on X. Has a lot of good information. The Imagination podcast, here as you can see on YouTube, she has a lot of good information about a lot of these different programs. Rachel the Dreamer on TikTok was also a good one. So those were a couple of the sources I used. Go check them out if you have any of those platforms, and start digging into the rabbit hole yourself. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.